The chamber was impossibly vast, carved from obsidian so dark it seemed to drink in light itself. Seated in a rising amphitheater of hovering thrones, the Galactic Senate pulsed with quiet arrogance. One by one, delegates of 1,000 species floated in their oaths of dominion, their fractal tongues curling in practiced disdain. The atmosphere was clinical, ritualized, perfectly designed to crush dissent under centuries of protocol. At the center of it all, alone beneath a pale beam of artificial starlight, stood the human diplomat. Ambassador Elijah Cormac did not bow. He didn't flinch under the 1,000 glares, didn't even blink at the chorus of whispered threats curling from the upper decks. His tailored coat, a deep navy marked with silver thread, bore no armor, no weapon, just a polished pin over his heart, Earth's emblem. A ringed glow breathed in flame. The silence wasn't hostile, it was amused. Cormac began to speak. You summoned us, not for peace, not for understanding. You summoned us to humiliate, to remind Earth of its place. Let me be perfectly clear. A tone snapped through the air, sharp, imperious, a cough disguised as a warning. From above, Grand Strategos Virene of the Thalzir extended one hand, palm open, fingers like bone-white scythes. You presume much, biped, he rasped. You stand before the Empire and speak of clarity. Your kind swims in ignorance and delusion. Virene rose, towering and ceremonial, every movement adorned with shifting armor that refracted in impossible angles. He gestured again. 2 guards flanking the central floor stepped forward, long rifles unshouldered. Elijah did not move. He knew the warning signs. The reports from the Andari border, the breakdown in comms, the trade negotiations deliberately poisoned with contradictory terms, the whispers from diplomats who vanished after meetings with the Strategos. The Empire wasn't losing patience. It was preparing justification. I am here in the interest of survival, Elijah said calmly. Not conquest, not submission, survival. And you are about to make a choice that cannot be undone. Virene's voice slithered like oil across the Senate floor. Humanity speaks as if its name carries weight. You came late to the stars and loudly, always demanding, always emotive, always so volatile. You lack discipline, you lack control, but above all, you lack respect. Elijah's eyes scanned the chamber, cold, focused. No, you mistake restraint for weakness. The Strategos tilted his head, signaling the guards. The weapons didn't hiss. They screamed, ionized bolts crackling with energy, twin blasts fired with mechanical precision. Elijah's body convulsed as the blasts ripped through his chest and shoulder. For a moment, the Senate was frozen in perverse awe, as the diplomat fell to his knees, then sideways, slumping hard against the polished floor. No one gasped. Not one chair shifted. This was theater, message, closure. The silence that followed was filled with smug satisfaction. A few delegates clapped. Some of the younger ones cheered. Virene turned away before the body finished twitching. Let be known. The Empire does not negotiate with viruses. In Earth's embassy vessel, parked respectfully at the edge of orbit, no alarm sounded, no retaliation launched. Instead, a single encrypted transmission blinked into the void, compressed, silent, and final. It read, Unleashed. 3 hours later, the Drelkin listening array, an ancient relay orbiting the Kuiper Rim, ceased transmission. No warning, no debris. One moment it was relaying cross-sector traffic. The next, its signal was replaced with black static, the kind that didn't flicker, didn't even shift with solar interference. The technicians in orbit of Ilos Prime laughed. Duff. They assumed human error, possibly sabotage. They'd always considered Earth a noisy neighbor with more emotions than strategy. When the second listening post vanished, then the third, the fourth, and fifth in rapid succession, there was no laughter, not even denial, only a tense scramble. For data, each report returning void. Back on the Imperial capital world, Virene dismissed the concern. Retaliation by a broken race, he scoffed to his advisors. Primitive vengeance. They're burning their own resources, Let them, Admiral. Quor of the Shalik, who had always respected the human ability to adapt under duress, said nothing. His compound eyes flickered toward the Senate's holosphere, watching patterns of signal loss move across the Empire's outer lattice like a predator's shadow. Is it a weapon? Someone asked. Virene grinned, a mouthful of crystalline. It is noise. Let the humans wail. On Earth no wail came, no speech from the president, no declaration of war. Instead, every diplomatic channel Earth once used fell silent. Every orbital station went black, switched to ghost protocols. Civilian traffic ceased. Every major city on Earth darkened its beacons. It was as if the planet vanished. The Empire mistook this for collapse. It wasn't. Beneath Antarctica, a sub-network pulsed to life, one not tied to Earth's defense matrix, but to contingency signals. Autonomous systems buried since first contact began to hum. Quietly, efficiently, without human command. They were built for exactly this. At the edge of the Sol system, a single alien recon cruiser, the Velarash, approached Saturn for a routine sensor sweep. It never reported back. Its sister ship, 20 light minutes behind, scanned the area. Nothing remained of the Velarash. Not wreckage, not energy trails, just a ring of displaced gravitational echoes where the ship had once been. Alien. Analysts reviewed the feed. A weapon, someone guessed. A spatial anomaly, someone else, voice shaking. Or they bent the kill event out of sync with causality. That wasn't destruction. That was removal. Theories spread like fire. None comforted the Senate, especially when encrypted human signals began to reappear, not from Earth, but across old Imperial battlefields, hidden comms, ghost stations, ancient vaults long thought buried. The humans weren't just retaliating, they were activating. On a military outpost near Egron Beta, a low-ranking communications officer received a strange artifact. No explanation, just a smooth sphere with Earth's emblem etched into the surface. When touched, it unfolded in silence. A hologram played. It showed the death of Ambassador Cormac, viewed from 3 different angles, time-synced, audio-enhanced. Then it cut to a simple message. You didn't kill a diplomat. You executed our restraint. The sphere vaporized before security could retrieve it. Empire-wide, military alerts skyrocketed, but no clear targets emerged. No fleet movements, no declarations, just echoes. Pings from old Earth colonies the Empire thought sterilized. Drones appearing inside vaults believed inaccessible. Systems once dead flaring with code written in Earth-standard encryption, but running on alien hardware. Virene demanded answers, demanded retaliation, but the Empire couldn't find Earth. It couldn't find where to retaliate. The humans hadn't declared war. They'd declared absence, and absence terrified the Empire more than fleets ever could. On the 3rd day, a council convened to draft a formal warning to Earth. They would offer terms, demand explanation, threaten escalation. The message was never sent, because at 0300 Galactic Standard, every screen across the Empire's diplomatic corps blinked on, a single image, Ambassador Elijah Cormac, alive, or perhaps recorded, or perhaps something more. He was seated in a chair that didn't exist in any known human facility. Around him, data scrolls, alien ship schematics, phase array coordinates, classified. He looked into the lens. We begged for peace. You mocked us. We offered restraint. You weaponized it. We gave you truth. You silenced it. A pause. Not dramatic. Intentional. We will not conquer. We will not invade. We will unmake your certainty. The transmission cut. No trace of origin. Virene stared at the blank screen long after the lights returned. Around him, the silence had changed. No longer amused, no longer smug. It was the kind of silence born not from arrogance, but from the first glimmer of fear. And somewhere deep in the Strategos' mind, a thought formed, a whisper without voice. Is this doubt? In the outer rim of the Dravari expanse, where stars hung like frozen screams against the void, the Empire's advance fleet lingered on high alert. 200 warships, engineered across 12 species, floated in perfect formation, cold, beautiful instruments of absolute control. They had been summoned not to fight but to intimidate. The assumption, of course, was that humans would surface somewhere within this region, somewhere with arrogance, somewhere loud. Nothing moved for 5 standard days. On the 6th, something. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't even a ship. It was an interruption. The command deck aboard the dreadnought Kresh Urak, the pride of the Vornok Dominion, flickered. No alarms, no breach warnings. Just a pause, subtle, surgical. Monitors froze mid-refresh. Gravity dampeners hiccuped. Time, or something like it, stuttered. And then every screen displayed a single line of text. War is not a declaration. It's a decision. You made yours. The crew reacted with trained efficiency. Systems were scrubbed. Channels were resecured. Nothing could have penetrated that deep without internal compromise. And yet diagnostics returned clean. No viruses. No evidence. Just the message, and the gnawing certainty it hadn't been a bluff. Admiral Scythar, commander of the fleet, issued a sector-wide alert. Patrol wings launched. Quantum beacons activated. Still, the void remained empty until it didn't. The destruction began at the fringe. A Harvac hunter cruiser monitoring the edge of dark space simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, its position plotted, comms active, crew logs updating. The next moment its location was a negative, a spatial debt no ship could fill. Not even debris. 2 minutes later another vanished, then 3 more. Fleet sensors screamed in confusion. No explosion signatures, no energy trails, no warp echoes, just disappearances, as if the void were feeding. Fleet formations contracted, defensive grids activated. Autonomous drones deployed to triangulate what sensors could not. And then, finally, something returned. Not a signal. A body. One of the Harvac. Crew, or what remained, embedded in a sealed emergency capsule. The remains were skeletal, the internal timestamp suggesting exposure to deep time. Thousands of years of decay compressed into seconds. Impossible. Unless time itself had been weaponized. The autopsy report never reached the fleet. Because before it could be transmitted, the ship conducting it imploded. Internally, in perfect silence. Across the Empire, confusion turned to paranoia. Paranoia hardened into dread. They had killed a diplomat to prove control. Now control was gone. The Senate tried to impose logic on the pattern, but there was none. The attacks were not territorial. They were not chronological. They were surgical, emotional, precise. They didn't follow strategy as the Empire understood it. They followed intent, the kind of intent that didn't come from orders, but from fury refined into clarity. The Empire had never understood human escalation. It was not linear. It did not pause for diplomacy once violated. It pivoted, adapted, devoured. They had mistaken humans for fire. They were wind. On Earth, there were no parades, no speeches. The war wasn't televised, because Earth had stopped thinking in terms of battles. It had started thinking in terms of erasure. Within the Sol defense grid, General Thorne reviewed the latest pattern of vanishing fleets. His face was stone, his voice even. They're still using imperial assumptions. Linear prediction. Response-based logic, that's their flaw. His team said nothing. They understood. This wasn't about brute force. This was design. A new warfare, rooted in misdirection, speed, and psychological disintegration. Thorne adjusted. The holomap. At 6 intersecting points, pulses blinked red. These are their perception anchors. Strategic blind spots, they won't know they have them until we move. One of the analysts leaned in. Sir, what happens if they finally adapt? Thorne didn't look away from the map. Then we do what we always do. Silence. Redesign. Back. In the Dravari expanse, Admiral Scythar authorized full-spectrum engagement. Every drone, every AI node, every sensor flare launched in a synchronized wave. painting the system with quantum threads designed to catch any distortion, any phase ripple, any shadow. What they caught wasn't a ship. It was a signature. Human. But not just human. Cormac, his neural ID long thought lost with his death, appeared across 6 ships at once. Not a projection. A full biometric ping, exact in every scan, from retinal to genetic. Each vessel reporting the signature triggered a fail-safe lockdown. None succeeded. The signature was bait. Within minutes, all 6 ships began to drift. Systems deactivated. Artificial gravity reversed in some. Time acceleration in others. Hull integrity seemed intact, but inside each ship, crew members died in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Some froze in place, others aged into ash. One vessel experienced a looped second for 98 iterations before its quantum core cracked. No weapon had fired. No enemy had entered. The Kresh Urak's crew watched in silence as their sister ships dimmed one by one. Sithar didn't issue a retreat. He issued a request for explanation, for terms. No answer came, only another image, projected directly onto the Kresh Urak's primary command wall. Elijah Cormac, again. Older now. Wearing a uniform no human faction had ever used. The silver-threaded Earth emblem, now fused with glyphs of unknown origin. He spoke slowly. You taught us how to interpret silence as weakness. Now you will learn what silence means when it becomes intentional. Behind him, a galaxy map lit up. Not a star map, a threat map. Across it, systems once marked as imperial. Strongholds were now shaded in red. Not claimed, not contested, nullified. We offered you respect. You demanded obedience. We offered empathy. You dismissed it as chaos. Now we offer only response. The image vanished. Admiral Sithar did what no officer in the Empire had done in 600 years. He issued a fleet withdrawal. No one objected, yet the retreat was not escape. It was recognition. Recognition that the rules had changed, and with them, the paradigm of dominance. The message was clear. Humanity no longer recognized imperial definitions of space, of war, of hierarchy. In the capital, Virene watched the data flood in. Every tactic he ordered failed. Every formation countered before being issued. It wasn't strategy, it was preemption. As if Earth now operated 6 moves ahead. In a game the Empire no longer understood, he summoned his inner council. What are we facing? He demanded. General Lask of the Drosari let his mandibles click thoughtfully. Not revenge. That would have ended hours ago. Then what? Lask's answer was simple. Adaptation. For a species the Empire once considered emotionally unstable, humanity had become terrifyingly calm, and that calm was spreading. On the outermost system of the Janari Reach, a fringe world once sterilized by imperial decree began receiving signals. Not threats, not commands. Maps human-made, precise, and laced with coordinates outside the Galactic Registry. Places even the Empire dared not explore. The implication was as clear as it was disturbing. Humans weren't just retaliating, they were recruiting and, not with words, with opportunity. The first Allied defection came 2 days later, a minor race, technologically backward, but once protected by the Empire, until that protection cost them their culture. When the message arrived, they responded not with speeches, but with silence, and a full shutdown of Imperial comms. One by one, other, minor powers followed. Silent fractures spreading across the Empire's web. It was not revolution, it was erosion. Virene paced the upper tiers of the Senate chamber, eyes fixed on the empty floor where Elijah Cormac once stood. He had seen species. He had seen threats burn bright, then fade. But this felt different. This wasn't a flare, this was pressure. Cold, relentless tidal A force not bound by strategy or honor. It was the slow-motion realization that humanity was not playing the same game. And if that was true, then the Empire had already lost. Because they had taught humanity everything. It needed to destroy them, and humanity had learned, Not through conquest, but through humiliation. And now the lesson was complete. The Empire, once an unchallenged power in the galaxy, had started to feel its first true tremor. For the first time in centuries, the Senate was forced to listen, not to their diplomats, but to their enemies. Humanity. The same species they had written off as mere nuisances. Admiral Caesar sat at the head of the war table, his mind racing. Every decision he had made was calculated, every strategy designed to prevent the kind of collapse now looming over them. But none of it had been enough. His fleet was in disarray, with entire systems going dark in rapid succession, entire planets slipping from their grasp. Their efforts to suppress Earth's response were failing. And Earth was not merely retaliating, it was winning. Across the war room, his officers, once confident and steadfast, now shifted uneasily in their seats. The faces on the holographic screens flickered with static, some of them barely holding their composure. "We can't keep pretending like we're in control," General Draxian muttered, his broad frame hunched over a console. "They're not just hitting us in the military. Their influence is spreading, pulling entire colonies away from us." Caesar shot him a cold look. "That's because you think it's about influence. It's not. It's about something else." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, even as the bitter taste of uncertainty gnawed at his throat. No species could evolve this quickly. No species could adapt this fast. The humans weren't just learning, they were anticipating, predicting their every move before they made it. Draxian's mandibles clicked in frustration. "What do you think? They're beating us at every turn. We need to respond, hit back harder." "No, we can't." Caesar's voice was sharper now, his tone filled with the weight of resignation. "This isn't a conventional fight. We're facing something unknown, something we've never seen before." The lights in the chamber flickered. The air felt thick, oppressive. Caesar leaned forward, his gaze distant as he stared at the galaxy map, where Earth's systems had suddenly multiplied, like dots blooming in the dark. "Every move we make, they counter. Every tactic we deploy, they know it before we do." He clenched his fist. "How can they predict us? How do they know our next step? How are they already 2 steps ahead?" A soft, cold voice broke through the silence. "Because they've learned to read the universe in ways we never have." Caesar turned to find Virene standing at the door of the command center, his face drawn with the fatigue of weeks spent without sleep. His eyes, once bright with certainty, now showed the first traces of doubt. "What do you mean?" Caesar demanded, his patience running thin. "Explain." Virene stepped forward, his movements deliberate, and looked at the map of the galaxy. "I've spent the last few days researching human war strategies, and I've found something strange, something I didn't think was possible. They're not following a traditional path of conquest. They're not building power. They're destroying ours from within." He tapped a few keys on the console, and another set of data points appeared. A series of collapsed star systems, colonies, that had been abandoned, cut off, and systematically erased from all Imperial records. Caesar frowned. "What is this? What does it have to do with anything?" "They've begun rewriting history," Virene said softly. "They've been planting seeds of doubt, fostering unrest among our allies. They're not simply taking systems, they're making them irrelevant. They've created an alternate narrative, one that the galaxy is buying into." Caesar stared at him, disbelief filling his chest. "What? No, that can't be." "It's happening," Virene cut him off. "Do you think those minor species are defecting because they fear us? No. They're following a different truth now, one we're not part of. And that truth is that the Empire is not what it once was, that we're vulnerable, that we can be replaced." Draxian shook his head. "This is madness. No species has ever successfully destroyed an empire like ours. We've conquered civilizations, crushed rebellions. We are—" Virene interrupted. Again, his voice low but cutting through the arrogance. "We are shattered from within. Our foundation is cracked. We've been too proud to see it. And now the humans are coming. not to defeat us in battle, but to dismantle us piece by piece. The room went silent. There was no more bravado, no more arrogance. They had built an empire with the idea that they were unassailable, unbreakable. Now all of that was in jeopardy, and they hadn't even seen the first blow. Sithar's mind raced. What Virene was saying was true. The signs had always been there, buried under layers of imperial rhetoric. The human diplomats had never come with threats. They came with words, with promises, with visions of a future free from the Empire's suffocating grip. But now, it was no longer about words. Now they had moved beyond diplomacy, and there was only one thing left to do. Fight, but not like before. You said they've created doubt, Sithar said, his voice hardening with resolve. Then we will counter their narrative. We will show them that no matter what they do, we are the Empire. We will remind them of who we are. Virene looked at him, his expression unreadable. And if that doesn't work? Sithar's eyes narrowed. It will. Because they don't know what they've started. He turned to the holomap, the lines of imperial space blurring as he traced the path of destruction humans had left in their wake. We won't stop. We can't. We must remind them why they fear us. And how do we do that? Draxian asked, his voice tense. Simple, Sithar said, a cold smile creeping onto his lips. We make them see who they're truly up against. The Bok fleet would not retreat. They would not bow. They would strike back, not with brute force, but with a force that no species could understand. The relentless power of an empire that had never known defeat. They would make their enemies question whether humanity was ready to truly face the might of an empire that had reigned for millennia. But Sithar was beginning to wonder whether humanity's true strength lay not in its military power, but in its ability to inspire fear, doubt, and ultimately chaos. Back on Earth, General Thorne sat in silence, his fingers tapping an absent rhythm on the desk before him. His team had gathered once more, but there was no urgency in the air. No fear, just a quiet, deliberate focus. We've broken them, he said at last, his voice steady. But we haven't won yet. Now we do what we've always done. A brief silence followed. Then one of the analysts spoke. What's that, sir? Thorne's eyes gleamed with a dangerous certainty. We make them wish we had. And in that moment, every single person in the room understood. They had started a war, but it was not the war they had originally expected. They had ignited something far greater, something far darker, and there would be no retreat, not for them, not for the Empire. Because when humanity had decided it was time for war, it didn't just pick up arms. It redefined what war meant. The air on the imperial capital was thick with the tension of impending catastrophe. Even the grand halls of the Senate, with their soaring arches and smooth, cold surfaces, could not mask the growing uncertainty that swept through the Empire's leadership. Sithar stood at the head of the Senate chamber, his fingers gripping the rail before him, staring down at the assembly of cold-eyed bureaucrats, generals, and advisors. They were all waiting for his orders, but no one was sure anymore what they could do to stop what was coming. For weeks now, their strategies had failed, one after another. The human fleet had outmaneuvered them at every turn. Diplomats from Earth continued to show up with placating words and requests for dialogue. But underneath the surface was something far more insidious. A well-orchestrated campaign of psychological warfare, systematically undermining the Empire's credibility and power. Every human diplomat who was sent had been another piece of a vast puzzle, each one connecting a deeper, more unnerving truth. Sithar knew what this meant, even if the others were too blinded by their arrogance to see it. The humans were not fighting them in the traditional sense. They weren't engaging in battles of attrition or building massive fleets to compete. No, they were fighting with their minds, their unpredictability, their deep understanding of chaos. These were their weapons. And the Empire, in all its precision and logic, was faltering against it. What have we done wrong? General Draxian's voice was low, his shoulders hunched in defeat. His once immense confidence had been eroded over the past weeks, and now he was a shadow of his former self. Why can't we stop them? Scythar's lips curled into a thin, grim line. He did not respond immediately. He did not have to. The question had been answered 1,000 times in his mind. The humans were unpredictable, unquantifiable. Their strength was not in their weapons or fleets, but in their refusal to conform to any of the rules the Empire had set for conquest. They had turned their greatest advantage into a weakness. They are changing the rules of the game, Virene spoke, his voice barely above a whisper, though every word carried the weight of 1,000 realizations. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with the kind of intensity that Scythar had come to associate with a desperate final revelation. We've always believed that domination was a matter of strength. The strongest fleet, the greatest firepower, the largest number of subjugated worlds. But they are showing us a different truth. Virene stepped away from the table, his fingers lightly brushing the holographic display of the galaxy. They are not trying to conquer us. They are trying to destroy us piece by piece. Their tactics, their intelligence, their influence, none of it is about brute force. They are tearing apart the very fabric of what makes us an empire. Scythar turned his gaze to the map. The once vast swaths of territory controlled by the Empire were now shrinking, areas of vital strategic importance slipping from their grasp. I don't need you to tell me this, Scythar muttered, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on him. We've seen the evidence, but what do we do about it? The question, Virene said slowly, is not what we do about it. It's who we are in the face of it. Scythar's brow furrowed. Virene had always been a man of few words, but there was a depth to his statement that caught Scythar off guard. What do you mean? Scythar asked, his tone more demanding than intended. Virene let out a long, slow exhale before meeting Scythar's eyes. The empire we have built is crumbling because we built it on a lie. We've told ourselves that strength and control are the only things that matter, but they're not. The humans, they've shown us that a new kind of power exists. One we can't predict, one we can't suppress. We are failing because we are stuck in a paradigm that no longer applies. For the first time, Scythar felt a flicker of doubt in his chest. The Empire had always been invincible in its own eyes. It had been built on the foundation of control, of supreme strength, and of unwavering authority. To hear someone, especially Virene, suggest that the Empire had outlived its own usefulness felt like a betrayal of everything they had fought for. What are you suggesting? Scythar asked through gritted teeth, his tone almost dangerous. I'm suggesting, Virene replied, that we stop fighting them on their terms. We stop trying to outthink them or outmuscle them, and instead become something else, something they can't predict. Scythar remained silent for a long moment, his mind a whirl of conflicting thoughts. The strategy was clear. Shift their approach, adapt to the enemy's tactics. But could it truly work? Could they truly evolve fast enough to match the humans? You're asking me to gamble everything, Scythar said finally, the words feeling heavy even as he spoke them. On a chance that we can change who we are? Virene nodded, his eyes never leaving the map. Yes, the humans have already rewritten the rules of war. If we don't rewrite the rules of the Empire, we will lose. Permanently. Draxian's voice broke the tension, his face pale as he leaned toward Scythar. What if it's already too late? Scythar's eyes flicked to Draxian, and for the briefest moment something like fear passed through him. Could it be? Could they have already lost before the first true battle had even begun? He quickly shook the thought from his mind. It's not too late, not yet. He turned away from the map, his mind refocused. A moment ago he had felt the walls closing in. Now, something else stirred within him. It wasn't hope, not quite, but something more dangerous. A cold, calculated certainty. Virene, gather every resource we have left. I want a new fleet designed, something they can't predict. Virene's face remained neutral, but there was a flicker of approval in his eyes. And what of the humans? They are more than a tactical threat now. They are an ideological one. They are a symptom of a greater disease, Scythar said, his voice low and threatening. And we will stamp it out before it spreads. We'll turn their tactics against them. He paused, allowing his words to settle. If we're to rebuild the Empire, we'll have to become something they can't even comprehend. Something so far beyond their understanding that they'll crumble in the face of it. Draxian looked at him, his earlier fear now replaced by something closer to anger. You're talking about changing everything. I am, Scythar said simply. This empire will survive, but not by the old rules. He turned back to the map. Prepare the fleet. We're going to show them what happens when the Empire stops playing by their game. They will regret what they've started. And in that moment, the Empire's destiny was set. There was no turning back. Not now, not ever. The war for the future of the galaxy had begun, and humanity had no idea just how far their recklessness had pushed the Empire. But Scythar did, and he was ready to fight it in a way that no one could predict. The age of the Empire had ended, and the age of something new had begun.